Good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is a pleasure to be back with you guys. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Turn this music down. Welcome to a Convo with B Mac. Of course, I am the host, B Mac, and we talk about mental health here and all the topics and all the things that affect the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. Today's topic is going to be healing and vulnerability. I often, when we start the show, I give a quick backdrop of how we got here. About 2 years ago now, I decided to do this show with the encouragement of some really good friends, based on what I was going through at my point in life. And I looked around and I didn't have anything that I could kind of reach out to get that type of support. So because of that, I was led to do this show, to create a safe space for us to talk about these issues, and encourage each other, as well as, provide tools and resources. And so here we are today, and I have two amazing guests here, and you're going to get a chance to meet them here shortly, and they're going to really give you some wonderful insight. And I look up to both of them in a sense because they have a lot of knowledge. And also, I have to say I'm really appreciative for having people like that in my life that are willing to come in and be a resource whenever their schedule permits. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Mr. Rashard Hayes and Dr. Gideon J. Winfrey. How's it going, brothers? Hold on. Let me see here. I'm having some audio issues here. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear you, good brother.
All right, good deal, good deal. My audio was kind of loopy for a second there. I got worried. I was like, dang, I done broke it already. um, Rashard, I know you've been on the show before, but I want to give you a chance to kind of give everybody a heads up on your background. I can't. Your mic's out, bro. Hold on, let me check your mic.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Rashad Hayes. I'm a professional speaker, social worker, PhD student, and one thing I do is I help people improve their lives with cake.
I like that, Dr. J. Gideon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Uh,
Yes,
give,
sir.
give that you are a frequent flyer here on the show, but for those that are new to the show, give them just the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, all right. First and foremost, thank you, good brother, and also good to share space with you, good brother Rashad. Dr. J. Gideon Winfrey. I'm a licensed clinical practitioner of 20 years. Been practicing all together for almost 30 years in mental health. Done a little bit of everything. Definitely sent by God to do God's work. So always a pleasure to be able to serve, but particularly to come and be in the company of brothers, particularly, is always a pleasure. So that's the Reader's Digest version.
Oh man, Rashad, I'm gonna call him James because that's what known it for how many years. We go back 20 plus years. Two young guys that were trying to figure it out,
Hmm.
and God has managed to allow us to stay in contact. So I'm really appreciative to him. Um, but without further ado, guys, the topic is healing and vulnerability, and because it's Men's Mental Health Month, I really felt like this was really a topic that we really need to tackle to end end the month, because um, most men don't know what healing even looks like. And God forbid we talk about vulnerability. So my first thought was, you know, is that a result of toxic masculinity? And I want to hear what you guys think. Your mic's back out, Rashad.
So for me, what I really think is I wouldn't call it toxic masculinity. I think it was just one that we just didn't know. And we can't punish someone for not knowing. Now, there is a thing where we can say, hey, it is your fault for not trying to learn. But I will say that I think it's just a lack of knowledge. And one of those things of, do I feel safe enough or comfortable enough for saying, hey, I need to learn this now? Do I feel it's too late? You
Right.
know, for so long, I think as men, we tend to bury ourselves behind these masks. And so the hard part is how do I take them off? Because I have so many on.
Mm.
That's one thing I kind of discovered when it comes to healing and vulnerability. It's not that people don't want to, but for so long, if it became my defense mechanism to protect myself by not being that way, how do I trust that I'm going to be safe by doing it? And so that's just one thing that I like to kind of think about this whole process. So I wouldn't call it toxic masculinity, because when we say that, we don't give a solution to it. We just say, hey, we just call it something. And
Right.
and that's why I want to kind of challenge that belief as well, because I do believe we all have an opportunity to not only heal, but to live the life that we deserve and desire to live.
Okay. Brother Winfrey, anything you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Toxic masculinity is one of those terms that I reject. Oftentimes, those terminologies are pop psychology terms, and the thing about those kind of terms is the more you hear them, the more subjective they are, and the more that they'll be influenced by people who have not done the self work or let alone any research. I've always asked the question, if we're going to talk toxic masculinity, then by nature, why isn't there ever a conversation about toxic femininity in
Okay.
that regard? So it's difficult to have a terminology that's not balanced to both genders, because we're all human when it's all over said and done. Um, in regards to healing, I think that when you talk about healing when it comes to men, what comes to mind, or what I've seen in my 30-year career, is that oftentimes we don't think of healing because we don't recognize the prerequisite, which is hurting.
Mm.
I can't heal if I can't even acknowledge the hurt.
Mm.
And oftentimes it's shocking. I know from a clinical perspective, when I talk with men in therapy and the conversation comes about really empowering the humanity of their hurt, and them being able to understand that feelings are not gender specific. There's no male or female hurt; it's just hurt.
Right.
Being able to recognize that when you talk about hurt, you have to recognize emotions, and all emotions are, per clinical definition, is the external stimuli that causes us to feel something. Feelings is the subjective response that we have to the emotion. So when you start being able to give a confines for the empowerment to feel, that's when you start the real healing process. But if there's no acknowledgement of feeling, you can pretty much throw healing to the wind, because it's not going to happen.
Man, I didn't got took to school early. We're in the first 5 minutes. Okay. And with that being said, and we talked about healing. One of the other notes or talking points that I had was, what does what is healing, and then from the second part to that, and I'll go ahead and put it out now, is what does healing look like for men? So let's go with the first part. Let's break down what healing is, because it can be different for everybody, and it's going to be different what that looks like for everybody. So, but I at least want to get you guys' perspective on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, who I Jet, James, I'll let you go first since Rashad took the first one, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Okay. Um, when you talk about healing and what it looks like, for me as a practitioner, I think healing has two components here. I think healing has a component of forgiveness
Hmm.
and also release.
Okay.
Forgiveness and release. Um, One of the things that I actually say in therapy a lot, um, when the question is asked, how do you know if you've healed, or if you're dating, how do you know if that person has healed? And here's the criteria that I tend to present.
Hmm.
You will know if you've healed or if another person is healed when they can talk about what happened to them without demonizing the person that did it to them. That's how you can know that you're healed. When you can see the role that you played in it, take ownership of it, but then also layer it with action plans as into why it won't happen to you again, and why the person in your life wouldn't have to be worried about whether they will be a victim of it in that regard. So there's a lot of intricacy there when you talk about healing being evidenced. And as I thought about the show, and I was going to try to say this for later, but the spirit has moved me to just throw it out there.
Hmm.
Um, in today's social media climate, um, I don't believe that healing can take place publicly. It
Hmm.
can't. It can't. Nobody has open heart surgery in the middle of a parking lot. You go to a hospital in a secluded place with trained professionals
Hmm.
who have years of experience uh, dealing in a team environment to do the surgery that's needed. So a lot of times, um, when healing takes place, if I see something, say somebody's posting a lot about, say, divorce,
Hmm.
uh, that's always a red flag for me, because I'm saying you're not healing because you're doing it publicly.
Hmm.
Healing requires you to disappear for a while. Again, using the medical model, nobody has surgery publicly. So if you're outside, as they like to say, if you're using social media as a platform to talk about something, you're opening yourself to so many people's opinions and so many different biases, and that is counterproductive to healing. You have to be in a place of um, consistency and constant nurturing and stability to be able to heal. And oftentimes with social media, you don't see that happening. And people say, "I'm healed, I'm healed, I'm healed." If you're healed, the evidence of it is in how you live and not in what you're saying. In that regard, so for me, those are some of the dynamics that I see when you think of healing, what it looks like, and what the ingredients are.
Okay.
I'm glad you said ingredients. I'm the cake man, so I talk a lot about ingredients, right? And so when I think about healing, I think about washing the dishes after you cook a meal. And
Mm-hmm.
there's times in life where we may not feel like washing those dishes. And so what we do, we allow it to pile up. And now we can't use it now until we wash it. And so when I think about healing, I think about that process of processing what you've been through and really being able to release it so you can use it again, use that pan again to create something new. I think oftentimes once we as men, in the past, I can honestly say that instead of healing from it, I would just throw it away and just be numb to it. Man, that didn't affect me. I'm okay. I'm good. Because I thought as long as I can't see it, I was okay
Right.
until it started latching out on everything else I would do. And so
Hmm.
as a professional speaker, like when I'm on stage, my goal is I always tell people I can't change your life in 60 minutes. But what I can do is make sure you realize that you got some dishes you need to wash. And so it's all about knowing that. And I tell people, I'm always saying, be careful with the word healed. Because when you're saying you're healed, you're pretty much putting this false expectation on yourself. Because for me, you're saying you're never going to get hurt again. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we get hurt unintentionally, sometimes we get hurt intentionally. And so I think it's all about just understanding the process of, okay, hey, I'm hurt. I acknowledge that hurt. Let me focus on the privacy of healing like I need to, so I can put myself in this position to be successful whenever I'm making my next move.
Hmm.
Um, Nowadays and age, especially in my time era, I'm around the 30s. A lot of times people get hurt, they go right to the next thing, and they
Hmm.
end up hurting that person because now they haven't took the time to do the work themselves. And now 10 years later, they're like, man, now I see, but now you have this bigger mess that you got to clean because you chose to ignore. You chose to ignore that situation. And so I think when it comes to healing, is your willingness to put in the work, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how long it takes. It's your willingness to put in the work. Like nobody can put a time zone, a time, stamp. Like nobody can tell you how fast you need to heal, but it is your responsibility to heal so you can live.
Awesome. Excellent responses from both you gentlemen. And Rashad, the last thing you said was, nobody could put a time frame on it, because that was going to be the next thing I was going to say. Elaborate and basically that there's no time frame. How long? Because some people think that there's an expectation that I need to be healed in this amount of time or that amount of time. And but the actuality is everybody's journey with that is completely different. Some people have this God-given ability to accept their hurt, process that hurt, and begin the healing and forgiveness a lot sooner than others. Because some people can't, get over the fact that this person that was so close to me did this to me. It's like somebody took a proverbial knife and put it in their chest, and so they may say I'm okay, but that healing process takes a lot longer. So let's talk about, not necessarily the process, but the time frame that a reasonable time frame that the average person should give themselves to work through these things. So, shot.
Again, I will go back to say I don't believe in putting a time on it as long as you're doing the work. Again, when it comes to baking the cake, you have your recipe you got to follow, but the more you know your recipe, the more you know what went wrong.
Right.
And I'm gonna say that again: when you know your recipe, you know what went wrong. Now you can see that final product of the cake and say, okay, hey, I got too much sugar in this. Hey, I got too much flour in this, and so you can make that adjustments. But most of the times when it comes to healing, we tend to lose a version of ourselves because we didn't expect that person to hurt us or whatever the case may be. And so whatever time it takes you to get back into that idea of saying, you know what, hey, I can process this now. Now let me do the work. Because again, it may take a day. For me, it may take 24 days, but it's all about the damage that was done. And it's all about taking the time to fix that. Taking the time to say, hey, no matter how long it takes, as long as I'm working, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and being conscious of that. And so that's why I say I would never make anyone want to feel like, hey, you got to do this. You got to speed this up. Because sometimes if we're not careful, we end up doing more damage trying to heal.
Right.
And so now it takes more steps to get to that point. And so I always say, if you want to do it long and wrong, do it quick. But if you want to do it right, take your time and pay attention to what life is trying to teach you, what God is trying to teach you, and really grow from it.
Okay. Brother Winfrey.
Okay. All right. The way that I would see time, I see time a little differently than I think that we typically do when it comes to healing. For me, time is kind of like a field of opportunity. And with time being a field of opportunity, what I see from the healing capacity is time can be leveraged with two things, which I think is critically important for healing. You have to first define what it's going to look like. I think you have to have a visual. You have to make it, what we say in social science has to be empirically based. If I'm just having a word with no definition, then I won't know when I achieve it. So if I can define what does my healing look like, and then what time allows us to have are measurable markers to say, okay, like say for instance, it brings to mind several individuals that I'm working with currently who are going through the divorce process or about to. And one of the things that we've talked about is always assessing where they are in the process, because that authenticity will tell you really what you have the ability to do and what you can't do. And in admitting what you can and can't do, it's empowering you to eventually do what you need to do, because you're given an accurate assessment of where you are in your ability. And you're not going to try to project something that's not really within your means to be able to do. So if you say, hey, in 2 months, I want to be able to something as simple as go out to dinner by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to sleep a whole night without getting up more than 2 times. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, if it's manageable, we can assess progress and be able to say, here's where we're trending in the right direction. In the areas that we didn't quite hit the marker, let's look why.
Mm-hmm.
And we can make it where it's manageable throughout the process, because healing is a process. But we I think sometimes um, we have the end result in mind before we've taken the first step,
Mm-hmm.
and that can give the impression of a false sense of healing, as was said earlier, or it can give the impression of failure. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not failure simply by taking the first step to say, hey, here's what I want to do, here's what it looks like, and I'm completely assessing as I go along, where do I fall when it comes to the markers of my healing, because that way I can make the small adjustments. And really, what it teaches you in the future, how to make small adjustments to prevent yourself from being hurt in the future. So if it's manageable and if it's realistic, um, it puts us in a position that it is always progressive in nature, but it's not tied to what we expect it to look like. And I think an example that I want to use to bring it home. Um, Interesting conversation my wife and I had when we got together. My wife's time between her dissolution of her union
Mm-hmm.
and mine was not the same. Like it was,
Right.
she was much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And one conversation we had early in our journey, she said, "Well, I've been virtually single for almost 10 years compared to your 2 or 3." And
Mm-hmm.
my challenge to that was, you may have been, you know, single longer,
Mm-hmm.
but you're thinking that because I stayed longer, that I didn't start to work earlier.
Right.
So as a result, the time might have been smaller, but the impact of work that was being done
Mm-hmm.
was comparable to your time
Mm-hmm.
in that regard. So a lot of times I think what we do is time is the indicator of some type of achievement, and it's not. And it
Mm-hmm.
gives a false pretense of effectiveness because we equate time to effectiveness. And that's
Right.
definitely not the case at all.
Right. Okay. Mm, awesome. I'm going to go back through and read some of the comments here that what we have. Let's see here. Of course, we have. Let's see. They're agreeing with comments. Chantal said true. Great Big Life TV said it can take a long time to heal when you don't acknowledge the hurt.
Hmm.
Paulson Place said it can be a long time even when you acknowledge it. I
Hmm.
think it's an ongoing process. Um, Robin A says an ongoing process with the understanding that setbacks will come. And Robin A also says it's not linear. And Paulson says absolutely. So I think you guys, everything you guys said that everybody seems to agree with and are very receptive to, because healing for everybody looks different, feels different, and it's their process is gonna and their journey is gonna be different. Such as like with your wife and her journey with it and your journey with it. Um, and I'll use like for me for example, it was like when I from the time I got divorced until probably about a year and a half ago. Um, it took me that long to go somewhere and eat by myself.
Hmm.
And that's just me being transparent,
Hmm.
because had I healed from the situation, yes, but there were just still aspects of it that was just difficult for me,
Hmm.
because I was I was married for so long. It was just hard for me to transition to be like, I just felt uncomfortable. So you know and it takes that time of just continuously working and just setting in. I didn't have in part of which you said something about setting goals. I didn't really know how to set those goals and say, okay, well, this is where I want to, here's my benchmark. I want to try and be here by this time, challenging myself. And even though during that time you're going to have some setbacks,
Hmm.
like was said, but challenging yourself. Hey, by this time I want to do this, by this time I want to do this. And, because that creates that accountability for yourself, so when you're like, there are going to be times you don't want to do certain things in that process, healing process. But if you create that accountability within yourself, it forces you out of that comfort zone. Let's see. Lena says, I agree wholeheartedly. I always celebrate, dang, this thing, I can't read a number of years married, but I always do not forget the years. Yeah, great. Tell me about the dash. What did the marriage look like? I'm sorry, Selena. This system is acting up, so I can't read all of it. So I hope I didn't butcher that up too much. Maybe the guys can see it a little better than me. Plus, I'm a little old. My eyes. I need readers. But so yes, I definitely agree. That process, that dynamic is going to look different. It's going to feel different. And depending on the circumstance, like someone said, it may be a lifelong process. If you're healing from the loss of a loved one, that type of healing could, and depending on that loved one, that could be just that a journey that you take for life. I'm sorry, Selena. She said I butchered it. Okay, I can read it now because it slid down. It says, I agree wholeheartedly. We always celebrate the number of years of marriage lasted. She says she does not. She says, I always say, forget the number of years. Tell me about the dash. What did the marriage itself look like? Okay. And I can completely agree. We will talk about I was married such number of years. Okay. That's regardless. What did it look like in that time frame? Was most of it good? Was all of it bad? Being able to have that honest discussion about it. Not with any malice or and disdain for the person, but being able to discuss it as what it is, because ultimately, in my opinion, it's one of those things to where you look back and what did I learn from this? To make me the better version of myself. So,
Good brother. I wanted to touch on what I think Selena, that's her name. I can appreciate how she introduced the time component because, as you said, we look at time as an indicator of some type of qualifying marker. One of the things that I say in therapy with couples in the early stages when we do marriage therapy, I always ask them this question, and it always throws them for a loop. So I'm probably gonna put one of my trade secrets out there, but it's all love. I ask them, "How long have you been married?" And then they will say, how long, or we've been married 15 years, 20 years, whatever. I say, okay. So then I ask them this question: how long have you been together? And then they'll come back and say, oh, 15, 20. I said, no, I don't think you understand the question. How long have you been together? Then it clicks to them what I'm saying. And they realize that we've been married however so long. But once I introduced together, one accord, in alignment, things flowing in an optimal way. Had one gentleman who had been married for 20 years, and when I posed it to him, he said, I think out of 20 years of being married, we've been only together for maybe 6 months. But now it opens up the conversation in terms of, what type of practices have lulled us to roommate situations. Are we really asking the needed questions instead of checking in with each other? Are we checking on each other? So it just opens up a lot of things in terms of not having the comfortability that comes with time. We think because we've been together so long that we'll just figure it out. But no, what is the quality of time that we've been together in that aspect? And are we really assessing all aspects of that? So I thought that was a very important dynamic to point out because we will use time as a placeholder or indicator of achievement, or it can also be used as an indication of some type of shortcoming. And it's neither. It's really dependent upon what do you have to show for it in terms of increase and in terms of of contribution ongoingly in that regard?
Sheesh, man. I love the way that you give a very different perspective on things because I know me personally. I have this tendency when I think that I'm right, I'm locked in that way. But it
Mm-hmm.
is the blessed part of it is to be able to be open minded to hear another perspective and understand that
Mm-hmm.
okay, I still can stand. I can be right, but there still can be another perspective where someone else can be right, and there's more information that you can take in.
Mm-hmm.
But having been open minded is definitely a plus side to growing. I'm not even just in healing, but to growing and evolving to the person that you want to be. Now I'm going to segue a little bit. Now let's talk about vulnerability, and let's talk about why, if this is the case, uh, men fear vulnerability, or if they don't fear it, why do they struggle with it? So, Rashad, I'd like to let you go first and see what your thoughts are on that part. And you can tackle it one at a time or go all in.
All right. I think when it comes to vulnerability, what I believe is that as men, sometimes we're afraid that it'll be weaponized against
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we don't put it out there because we don't want to. So for some reason, we see it as weakness. I always tell people, man, vulnerability is strength. Like if somebody breaking your house and your spouse or your partner tells you, "Hey, somebody in here," you may be scared, but because you want to protect that person, you're going to go out there and go see what it's about, right? I look at vulnerability that same way. Like whatever I'm afraid of, the fact that I'm going to face it
Mm-hmm.
and show the world like, hey, I'm not perfect. Hey, this is what I struggle with. Hey, this is what I'm trying to overcome. I think it's a feeling that makes you realize that you're human.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, when we ignore vulnerability, we have this false sense of hope. We have this Superman complex, right? We think, oh, we got to save everybody. I'm invincible. But the
Mm-hmm.
truth is, you haven't allowed yourself to be vulnerable because you haven't faced it.
Right.
And so, even with myself, I went from playing college football to fighting for my life. When I was diagnosed with cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and for the most time, when people was asking me, "Hey, are you okay?" I would smile and say, "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good." But at night, that's when depression was coming.
Mm-hmm.
That's at night. That's when the suicidal thoughts was happening. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I embraced that vulnerability that I found my voice.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get to travel the world and share this pain, like literally share this pain and help identify purpose. But now I get to do that because I embraced my vulnerability. I embraced that as strong as I thought I was really stronger, right? Like I really allowed myself to feel. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I think as men, we were always taught that throw some dirt on it, get up, you all right, keep
Right.
pushing.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I naturally ingrained that. So, like, I'm telling you, when the doctors came in and said, "Hey, you have cancer," the first thing I said was, "Oh, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm gonna throw some dirt on it." I didn't even give myself time to process it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until that chemo started kicking in, it wasn't until my hair started coming out that I was like, "Oh man, hold on. Now this is different. This is heavy." But
Mm-hmm.
now, who do I have to call on because I told everybody else I was all right? And so then I learned vulnerability is just being able to just be, whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad. It allows people, those right people that'll be around to say, "Hey, brother, you need a shoulder to cry on," or "Hey, you need somebody to talk to." And so for me, that's my take on vulnerability is realizing it's your greatest strength once you understand the process and what it's trying to do for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. J.
I think in my case, I would see vulnerability as, particularly for us as men, when you go back to our upbringing, it's not something that's introduced to us. We're
Mm-hmm.
penalized for it. If we have siblings and we have a sister, if the sister cries, daddy says what's wrong. If you cry, it's hush up.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn from a very early age that um, it is difficult and challenging for people to deal with men and emotions because going back to what I said earlier, emotions are the result of external stimuli. And
Mm-hmm.
when people see emotions, particularly with men, it makes them uncomfortable because emotions say, that you have to look at the impact of what you did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have to look at the impact of what you did to me, then you'll never acknowledge that. But when we get to the point that our vulnerability, first of all, is something that we give ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
then at that point, I believe that the world just follows suit at that place, at that place in time, in terms of letting um, letting ourselves experience what it is that we feel in its authenticity, and whatever comes from that, um, we don't we don't go to talk about vulnerability. We go and share it. I
Mm-hmm.
talk a lot about that in therapy. One of our problems as men is we don't recognize people that we just need to share with versus those we need to talk to.
Mm.
Um, Having the right people to talk to is where you can be safe, but we will bypass what makes us feel safe. I say this in therapy all the time. You got to know your audience and know your venue at all times.
Mm.
Um, Everybody, based on just kind of watching their life, you'll know the people that you can be entrusted with,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll know basically by how you've had other involvements and situations how entrusted they can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that for us, vulnerability really comes down to, again, you can't ask anybody to give you something that you're not willing to give yourself.
Mm.
Whatever you feel is what you feel. If there's an issue that people may have with that, that's the first indication that that's not going to be somebody that's going to be safe for me to be vulnerable with. So I know what it doesn't look like, but in return, it also teaches me on what to look for as well.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. A lot of information here. Rashad, you started out and you said, we talked about men being afraid of it being weaponized against them.
Mhm.
Um, and so the word that came to mind was validate. Um, and I think it's important for those that we feel vulnerable enough with to share whatever those emotions are, to validate whatever it is we're feeling, whether you agree or not. You may, or whether you can understand, but I think it's important to validate what someone's feeling, and not just, oh, oh man, you're a boy, don't worry about that. Like when we were young, you scrub your knee, oh, you're a little boy, what I'm saying, shake it off. you know that doesn't mean I'm a little boy, yes, but that don't mean my knee don't hurt. Don't, when someone shares however they're feeling, it is important to validate whatever it is they're feeling. Understand, it's okay to feel that way. I'm not saying uphold them when they're wrong, but allowing them to express how they feel, and because we're entitled to that. And I
Mhm.
think part of what makes it difficult for men is our feelings have been invalidated from the time that we could walk till we became adults, which heightened that fear. Because, man, yeah, I know she loved me, but I don't know how she gonna handle me saying, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." So it's important for those that are close to you. If you get up enough courage to express your feelings, to validate their feelings, allow them to validate their feelings. I'm not saying that you got to become their therapist, but don't say, "Oh no, it ain't this," or "Oh no, it ain't that." Because it is a journey to get to
Mhm.
that point, to be able to express your feelings, in just in the onset. So,
Mhm.
what any input on that aspect of it?
Yeah, I want to speak on what you said, good brother, about the validating part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's where we go wrong often is we look for validation.
Mm-hmm.
And in looking for validation, I think we'll always be subject to um, not having it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when I said earlier, you do the self work in such a way where you're simply sharing it, and
Mm-hmm.
in the processing or those dark places that we tend to want to avoid. When you
Mm-hmm.
come out, you're simply sharing with people. You don't need the validation because you got it when you was in that dark place, when you decided to ask the difficult questions, you experienced the feelings that came with it. And when you come out, you're so rooted in what you know, you don't need validation. And a lot of times with validation, you're asking somebody. Now, here's the trick: you're asking somebody to give you something that, if they had the capacity to give you, they would have given it to you to begin with. You're talking empathy, and well, you're talking empathy, really, when you say validation.
Okay.
And a lot of times, what people mistake sympathy for empathy. People mistake understanding as listening, and they're not the same thing. A lot of times we say, "Oh, I just want people to understand." What understanding, by definition, simply means comprehension. Most people comprehend what you're going through. The challenge is empathy. It is hard for people to take themselves out of their shoes and get into yours, and that's where the gap is, right there. So understanding that if I don't give that to myself, nobody else is going to give that to me. And what does validation of self look like? Here's how I feel. Here's how I feel. I'm simply sharing it with you. I didn't come to you to validate it, because if you had the capacity to validate, you would have done so on the front end. This way, we just cutting out a whole lot of extra. If I'm trying to heal, I'm focused on that. And whoever is a complementary to that process is who I want around me, is who I want to go to. Those people have already demonstrated those attributes. So if you weren't available in the situations that led to me being hurt, you won't be available to the situations that I need to contribute to my healing. So I have to look at the intricacies and really draft my team based on who was there, who was available, who were the people that reminded me of who I was when I wanted to forget. All of those type of dynamics are part of the healing process. So validation, at least in my clinical approach and what I believe in my personal life, nobody can give that to me but me. At that point, once I get it, now I accent it through my relationships. So now it becomes something that extends outside of me, and now it generates my ecosystem, the culture of people around me, and my circle and my circumference. So I literally create my own universe, but it has to start with me first.
Gotcha.
I want to chime in for a second because I think this is where we get tricky, and this is where the water get a little muddy. Um, Depending on your level of comprehension and your understanding, it can be hard to say, "Hey, validation," and then as far as acknowledging what someone is going through. And if I feel like I don't have that person that can acknowledge it, then maybe I have to find that validation in the lessons I learned from that pain. And so I'm one where I look at, okay, hey, what did this lesson teach me? Yes, it hurt, but why did it hurt? You know, and dig a little deeper. And so I always tell people that, you know, you can't bake a cake in a cold oven. Like, you need that heat. And so at some point, like, what is that one situation? What did it teach you? Because again, as humans, we're flawed. You know, we're not perfect. You know, we're going to do things that are going to upset each other. But what can I learn from that encounter? Okay, hey, I just had an issue with my parents. Okay, but was this a cycle that their parents taught to them? You know, not saying that, hey, I gotta allow them to have that past because they didn't know any better. But now that I know, what am I going to do to fix that? What am I going to learn from that to make sure that I'm not passing the same thing on and on? And so I always say, when I tell people, when it comes to validation, I agree with you, doctor. When it comes to validation, it's you doing the work, but it's also you paying attention to what that lesson tried to teach you. You know, it's you saying, okay, hey, what can I gain from this? I always say, you know, you can gain something, you can make something out of nothing. You know, it's just all about your ability to really take it in and understand at some point, how are you going to respond to the ingredients that life is giving you? You know, whether you be a victim or you're going to be someone that's going to use it to help you become a better person. I know we use that term a lot, the people that we desire to be. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't desire to be a motivational speaker. My goal was to go play football. My goal was to be in the NFL. It wasn't until cancer came in my life, all the other trials and tribulations came in my life, that I had to learn how to use that and create a new goal. And so I think that's one thing I always try to tell people is that sometimes your desires change. Give yourself grace and allow yourself to embrace that.
Awesome. I love everything all of you said, because it really, it gives a lot of room for the different levels of understanding. To everybody can relate at some level to understand, like, okay, yeah, because sometimes we don't have the words to articulate what it is we're trying to get across. So you guys approached it from different angles so everybody can be like, yeah, that's what I meant, that's what I was thinking. So I think it's really important to have dialogue such as this, so those that don't have the voice or the words, they hear this and they be like, man, he was reading my mind. He was saying what I was thinking. I've been trying to figure out a way to articulate that, and there it is. So now, because I didn't have the words, now I watched this or I heard this on Spotify. Now, when I'm trying to talk to those that are close to me, this is what I meant, and they can say, "Oh." And so I really, that's really why I think a lot of this is just so important. Us creating these dialogues. I'll read a few of the comments here, because they're coming in here. Let's see here. Give me just a second. Dang, this is the worst. Robin A says, strength and societal norms about masculinity change. Men should share their needs and feelings, fears and desires openly. Kimberly Player says, validation comes from healing. Preach. The Great Big Life TV says, is acknowledging someone's feelings the same as validating them. We'll come back to that in just a second. Robin A says, sometimes life challenges force him to come face to face. Indeed, they do. She said, sorry, face to face. God is creating you to become His plan. And then Robert A says, sorry, her typing is a hot mess. Don't worry about it. Your typing is a hot mess, and my reading and working this system because of all the changes is a hot mess. So, but we're gonna get through it.
Good brother, if I could, what good brother was saying, Rashad, about grace. That's the concept I talk a lot about in therapy. And I blend the sacred with the secular in my approach. And so one of the things I say in therapy with grace, I said grace is God basically giving you time. That's what it is. Grace is really time when you think about it. And the thing that I always say is whatever grace is given, best believe judgment is not too far away. And here's the thing. Grace is God giving you time to put together a product that ultimately will have to be judged. So if I got time, then that's God, or even because I believe that our relationships are just a a lower version of what we should pursue in the spiritual realm. But if I'm giving myself grace, I'm giving myself time to put something together that ultimately a judgment call has to be made. Because when you think about God giving us grace, it's just that. It's instead of punishing you, I'm giving you time. But ultimately, if I'm giving you grace, you best believe judgment is coming. Now, judgment is one of those words that have a negative connotation to it. Because promotion is also judgment. If you do well on your job, judgment is a promotion. If you don't do well, loss of the job is judgment. But because of the society we live in, we think judgment is a negative thing, and it's not. All judgment is I made a call based on how much time I gave you. So if I'm looking at healing, if I'm looking at relationships, if I have to contemplate, thank you. if I have to contemplate staying with a person or staying in a situation, if I give you grace, I'm making an assessment of everything you're doing in that grace period. But ultimately, like with our credit cards, you have a grace period. You can swipe that card and put $5,000 on it. And if in 30 days, when it comes, you have an opportunity to pay it off and it's even swap. But if you need a little bit more time, you got either the minimum payment you can make, or you can choose not to make a payment. But in choosing not to make a payment, then here comes the phone calls, here comes the text messages. And what happens is, from a life perspective, we get irritated when the payment don't get made. But we understood the terms of the agreement when we went into the relationship. So you're getting irritated because the terms now are making you responsible. But as long as that card is still usable, you don't think about it until one day you swipe the card, it don't work. And what we do is, the first thing we want to do is reach out to the credit card company, have an attitude with them when they've been calling for months to try to connect. But it wasn't until it impacted how we lived that we wanted to do something about it. So when you think about that relationally, they say, well, we gave you the grace period. We called, we text, we sent mail. You didn't respond. So based on the terms of this agreement, it's within our right to deactivate the card or reduce your credit limit. But it wasn't until it impacted you visibly, where everybody else could see it, because it might have been a classic weekend and you balling, and you done pulled out the card to swipe it, and now you embarrassed. but if the relationship meant something to you, you would have honored the original terms. So when you think about that relationally, grace wise, they made a judgment based on what they did with the grace that what you did with the grace they gave you. And it was completely in their right to do it. So you can make all the promises. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and make a payment tomorrow, but you had 6 months. You had 6 months. So when you think about it in that context, if I give you grace, you best believe judgment is coming. But people think grace is just a ticket to keep doing what they've been doing. And then when you make the decision, then they can come say, oh, things would have got better but I gave you grace. I gave you time and I have to make a decision. And that's typically where we tend to want to back off from, because grace obligates us to make a decision. You have to make a decision, because if not, you've just sent the message that you don't take yourself seriously. So why should anybody else do it? So that's why that self-grace has to be given first, because that's what I call it in my practice, demonstrated desirability. I'm only going to desire what I demonstrate. I can't ask anybody to give me something that I don't give myself. So yeah, I'll give myself grace. Sometimes things don't go the way I want. But if that's the established standard for me to be in relationship with me, with a God that gives me grace, everything in my life has to be what I call my Christ complementary. If it's not complementary to the Christ in me, it's going to contribute to the crisis in me. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, man.
Okay.
My seat got a little hot over here. Look, between Rashad baking the cake and you serving the heat right here, I'm just saying. That is why I love both you brothers, because I know that you guys are gonna share your insight and knowledge and God given talents, and and share it. And I truly appreciate you guys. I've lost my train of thought because I'm soaking up all this information, and it gives me new perspective on things. And when you hit the whole nail on the head about, yes, we're giving out this grace, but there's also judgment, because yeah, you grant this person grace, but ultimately at some point you're expecting change behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't change their behavior, now you've got to make a decision. Like I said, either you continue to allow that behavior and let them, as the kids say, play in your face,
Mm-hmm.
or you've got to, or as the kids say as well, you got to stand on business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it comes down to. And I think that's really a really important part of healing, because we can extend all the grace in the world, but if that person is not doing what they need to do, we have to be ready to do what we need to do so we can heal. Because especially if you're allowing them to continue to be in your life in some shape, form, or fashion, they can't be in your life and still be doing the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And you're allowing it because you essentially are putting the bandage on something, and then just when you, after a couple of days, you snatch it off like, all right, I'm good. You're not allowing the time to heal.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep allowing that same repetitive cycle of things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, B, I wanted to tell you real quick.
mhm.
What happens when you're the one hurting yourself? Are
Mm-hmm.
you going to give yourself that same grace?
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Are you going to give yourself that same opportunity to say, hey, I got to make change because judgment is coming? See,
right.
because it's easy to point the finger at everybody else because they hurt you. But
Mm-hmm.
half the time, I know there's people that's watching right now, you hurting yourself,
Mm,
knowing that there's things you should be doing, but you don't do it.
mm,
Knowing there's things you could be doing better. And so let's just be honest and take that armor off. Like it's easy when it's somebody we can see. What
mm,
happens when it's you when you're looking in the mirror? And that's why I want y'all to take this serious. This is why I want y'all to really soak in this conversation
mm,
because half of our battles start with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we literally teach people how we want to be treated.
mm,
Whether we say it out loud or whether we unintentionally do it. And so that's one thing I always tell people. Your first war is gonna be within. But once you master that, you now go back to what the good doctor said and say, hey, you don't need validation from nobody else because you know what you have to become the person that you desire to be and who God desires you to be.
Mm-hmm.
mm,
Mm-hmm. Spot on. Spot on. I always say that the enemy is the inner me every time.
mm. And,
Every time.
whew,
Every time.
man, listen, you guys really, really brought y'all a plus game today, which I knew you would, with some amazing insight. Um, and I hope everybody that got a chance to tune in uh, can appreciate this dialogue and the information that was, brought forth. And also, just a quick tidbit: uh, a combo with B Mac is now on Spotify. So for those that couldn't watch the show or what have you, that look, now you can go and listen to it on Spotify while you're walking, driving to work, what have you. Because I really feel like, and me and Brother Winfrey talked about this. This is part of my purpose, which is to be that catalyst to help create this dialogue and to put this information out there for those that may need it at whatever point in time in life that they come across it. And just to share a quick bit, a couple weeks back, Brother James called me and said, "Hey, I got I was studying. I got a word for you." And he talked about the Book of Esther. And after we got out the phone, well, he ran it. He went through it, and I was like, man, it hit home because I felt convicted by the different aspects of it. And I've listened to the Book of Esther 3, 4 times through and through. And every time I'm listening to it while I'm driving, I'm getting something else from it. Um, and so I said all that to say, I'm not gonna go into in the depths of the conversation, but you know, there is, when you feel compelled and convicted to do something, answer the call, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because in there, in that, God said, "Hey, look, you may not answer the call, but His will gonna be done.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you do it or somebody else do it, you may perish, but His will is gonna be done."
Mm-hmm.
And that was just one very small aspect. Well, that was one of the many aspects of that conversation that me and James had. And I was just like, you know what, full steam ahead. We're going to do the very best that we can do to provide this content for
Mm-hmm.
those that want it and need it, for as long as we're able to, as long as the Lord allows us to, because ultimately that is His call. I'm just walking in His steps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so with that being said, gentlemen, I appreciate you. I always try to keep the show to about an hour. We could go on and on and on about this, but I'm definitely gonna have both of you back. I need y'all to look at y'all calendars and tell me what y'all schedules look like. Brother James, I know when football season comes, I know I'm gonna have to work around Packers games and
Yeah,
Alabama. Well,
yeah.
we won't do any Saturdays, but we gonna work around. We gonna work around the Packers games. And tell Miss Winfrey, as always, I appreciate her for letting me borrow you on Sunday evenings. Rashad, tell the missus I appreciate her letting me borrow you because I know both of y'all are really busy, and to take time away from your families to be here means a lot. And I'm sure those that are able to chime in, I'm sure it means a lot to them as well. Let's see. Robin says, open up our own hearts, receiving God grace. Great Big Life TV says, great show. Thank you, gentlemen. Selena says, thank you all for an amazing word and opportunity. Also, guys, I almost forgot. I meant to say this at the very beginning of the show. I am giving away 2 Amazon gift cards. And if for whomever emails me the word of the day, and the word of the day popped up on the ticker. So if you email me the word of the day, you'll get an Amazon gift card. So that's for 2 people. I'm not gonna give both of them to the same person. So 2 people, if you email me the word of the day, you'll get an Amazon gift card. And guys, y'all both send me y'all t-shirt size because I designed the t-shirt for a Convo with B-Mac. And I'm gonna send y'all both the t-shirt. That's the least I could do. Because you guys have been so supportive. That's the least I can do is get you guys a t-shirt. So that is that. And we normally take it out with a prayer, and I'm gonna let whichever one of y'all that would like to do so lead the prayer. So we can pick a number between 1 and 5, and whoever gets the closest up, got
Hey,
it.
look, we ain't got to do all that. I'll take care of it.
Okay.
All right. So, Lord, we come to you to just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good, the bad, the ugly. Thank you for the breath that we have in our body.
Yes.
I ask that you continue to bless and heal those that are seeking healing. I ask that you continue to protect those that need protection. I ask that you continue to expand our minds as we continue to grow as individuals. I ask that you continue to watch over us. I ask that you continue to bless us into ways that we can't even imagine. And we thank you for all that you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Man. Again, thank you, Chantal. Chantal says, amazing show. Robin A says, thank you. The word was awesome. Thank you, B, for using your ministry to help others. It's a ministry now. I didn't know it was a ministry.
Always a ministry, brother.
I'm just teasing.
Always is.
But guys, thank you. For everybody that tuned in, thank you. I appreciate you. This show is for everyone that tuned in. Everybody that listened. This is who it's for. It's not for me. It's for any and everybody that to know that this is a safe space. This is where you can come and talk about what ails you, and you're not alone, because there's something in where he said, Lord didn't say there wouldn't be troubles. He just said you wouldn't be alone.
Right.
So with that being said, we're going to conclude the show. Thank y'all. God bless. And